Hello and welcome back to this episode of your Kingsport blog video update. I'm Jeff Fleming, Kingsport City Manager. I want to give you a quick rundown of what happened at the most recent Board of Mayor and Alderman meetings on December 15th and 16th. We spent quite a bit of time talking about downtown master planning. Justin Steinman of the Planning Department is in the process of putting together a unified downtown master plan where he pulls all of the existing plans into one location and provides an opportunity for us to kind of discuss, rank, and prioritize what initiatives we might want to pursue. So Justin's doing some great work in that arena, and if you would like to see more information about that plan, I would encourage you to contact him. Again, his name is Justin Steinman, and the phone number is 423-229-9485, and he will be happy to provide you a copy or to go through his presentation with you. We also recognized several staff members for the Insurance Services Office Class 2 recognition. We call it ISO for short. ISO evaluates the ability of a city or any firefighting agency to provide fire protection. And so they rank you based on the level of risk, based on the professionalism of your department. We achieved a Class 2 this year. 10 is the worst, 1 is the best. There are no Class 1 departments in Tennessee. There are only 9 Class 2 and only 750 Class 2 rated firefighting agencies in the whole country. So Kingsport is really in an elite class. We are the only one in Northeast Tennessee that has that rating. So really proud of the hard work that's gone into that. I've been with the city almost 30 years, and for 30 years I've heard that attaining a Class 2 is beyond our reach. But obviously they proved it wrong. So I'm really proud of the work that took place. And keep in mind, it's not just the fire department, but it's also water, GIS, who does the address database accuracy, and also Central Dispatch, who conveys the messages between those that are headed to the emergency. So it takes a broad spectrum of departments, and they pull it off seamlessly here in Kingsport. So really proud of our staff, and if you see one of them out, pat them on the back and say thanks. We also had several public hearings this time. We haven't had those in some time. One is to adopt a state law pertaining to vesting rights. So now when you submit a preliminary subdivision plan, whatever you submit on that plan is held intact until you finish the project within a designated period of time. Apparently in Middle Tennessee they were running into some issues where a developer would submit a preliminary plan, and then when they came back for final approval, the rules had changed and it increased cost, and it was creating some issues down there. So the legislature passed a uniform way of handling that across the state, so we of course adopted that last night. We had a public hearing on 9 annexation plan of services areas. Again, when we annex, just as a reminder, every year we go back and report on the progress of providing services until all of the services that we promised are in fact complete. So we had 9 that we reported on last night. Several of those were very small one-lot annexations. Others were a little bit larger, but I'm happy to report that all of our services are on time and within budget as we promised in the annexation. So hopefully we can continue our track record of accountability in our annexation promises. We also rezoned 708 Beechwood Drive in the Colonial Heights area. It's the first application of our urban agriculture district, and what that means is it allows a larger acreage tract to have a barn and to keep non-domestic animals like cats and dogs. It would be other types of animals in what you would consider to be more of a urban environment, and so it provides some flexibility for folks that have a little larger tracts. And so that was the first application of that, and we're anxious to see how that goes. But apparently the owner has kept animals for some time, and by having this zone, it'll allow him to build a barn-like structure that will allow them to contain the animals and hopefully be a better harmonious neighborhood as a result. We also rezoned property just behind Bloomingdale Pike at Larry Neal Way. There's going to be a new orthopedic office there. Watauga Orthopedics is going to build a new building. It's just it's right behind Intimate Treasures. right next to Country Garden Apartments and right in front of Kings View Apartments, if you know where those are. So Looking forward to new construction and new investment literally within eyesight of the hospital, so another major investment there. We rezoned the East Main Street property. Locals will remember it as the old Holston Builders. There is what's called a Rail Y, spelled W-Y-E, and essentially that's just a fancy word for a turnaround for a train. And that property is historically been valuable to have that turnaround, but really nobody's used that turnaround in quite a few years. So the Holston Builders buildings have been backfilled with things like basketball courts, tennis courts, CrossFit, and other kinds of adaptive reuse. So we felt it appropriate to change the zoning to B2, which is downtown zoning, and that way it's all the same in the downtown area. So proceeded with that last night. Also changed the periphery yard requirements on B4P shopping centers. There's a 30-foot development-free periphery yard required on every shopping center. Historically, we have not applied that adjacent to public rights-of-way, so you do have a setback, but instead of having the setback plus an additional 30 feet, we've been overlapping those and counting them together. This basically formalized that process, and so it won't result in any sweeping new changes. It'll just basically memorialize the current interpretation of that law. We changed some laws pertaining to beer permits. Currently, if you manufacture beer, you have a state permit, and you are allowed to have a tap room where you can have a beer tasting at where you manufacture it. Most people would call those craft breweries, microbreweries, or nano breweries. We have one in Kingsport, that is Sleepy Owl, which is located in what is the old train freight station that used to be the Chamber Building on Main Street. The changes basically say that he does require a city permit now by the City Beer Board, and he is not required to sell food. That way he's not a retail establishment, he's just a manufacturer. So basically sets the stage for a more appropriate way of dealing with craft beer and microbreweries and nano breweries. Those are cropping up all across Tennessee, so cities are having to figure out how to manage those, and this is our way of dealing with that. In other business, we approved all of the funding for the transit system. Chris McCart reported that the transit ridership has increased by more than 20,000 people this year, and that's phenomenal, because just a few years ago we were barely getting hundreds of people to ride it, and now it's over hundreds of thousands now. So it's become a very popular service that many people in Kingsport depend on. It is either 85 or 50% funded by the federal government, depending on whether you're talking about capital or operating, and so it is a way to leverage those federal dollars for the benefit of our city, and so transit continues to grow in that regard. We also are in the process of replacing a street sweeper. We have 3 street sweepers in Kingsport. We'll be replacing one each year for the next 3 years. The real story there is that we have a fleet fund where when we buy a piece of equipment, we pay into that fund every year to depreciate that equipment and so that we can replace it when the time comes. Many cities you'll see will have to go out and borrow money to buy equipment, so they'll put it off and put off and put off. This actually allows us to manage, and we've been doing that since the early 80s. And so even in the worst of budget seasons, you'll see replacement vehicles take place, and that comes from that designated fund. The board approved the application of a multimodal access grant from the Tennessee Department of Transportation, and that's a lot of fancy words for saying that we're applying to install a sidewalk on the south side of Stone Drive, basically from the BMW dealership down towards Kmart. There has been quite a bit of redevelopment in that area, and as redevelopment occurs, the individual businesses put a piece of sidewalk in front of their property. This will basically connect those dots if we get the grant, and we're certainly not guaranteed to do that. The grant is for $1 million. The city's portion of that would be $5,000. The rest would come from state sources. So we're hopeful, but we certainly don't have the money yet. If we do get it, it will be earmarked for sidewalks on Stone Drive. And then finally, we approved renewed leases with all of the tenants inside the Renaissance Center. The Renaissance Center has the Kingsport Theater Guild, Kingsport Art Guild, Kingsport Arts, Suzuki Talent Education of Appalachia, and Symphony of the Mountains. So we renewed leases with those entities and kept the rates the same. It's a great partnership, and it's a way to support the arts in Kingsport. That's your quick update. I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. I'm Jeff Fleming, Kingsport City Manager, and I will see you in 2015.